Welcome to China, a country rich in history and ancient culture, home to some 1.3 billion people in the fourth largest country in the world. Its predominant religion is Buddhism. However, many other religions unite the nation as China further opens up to the Western world. China boasts a plethora of traditions, stretching back over 4,000 years, many of which still exist today. One of these still around today is hospitality, consisting of making the guests feel welcome and comfortable, entertaining them, taking them out to meals, or cooking a feast of only the best dishes. With this tradition being kept, our guide, Miss Feng, tells us Mr. Ying, the mine owner, would like to take us out to dinner overlooking the famous Songhua River. Throughout dinner, a plan for the days ahead are discussed and agreed upon. After arriving late in the day, it's decided the first and closest location to visit should be the lapidaries factory, where the gemstones are cut. The team of approximately 150 lapidarists are mostly female, which is unusual, but a refreshing sight, as historically, lapidary has always been a male-orientated occupation. Mr. Ying tells us how he only employs the best, and makes it clear that employees prosper through excellent cutting and meritocracy. He also explains that by focusing primarily on Peridot, his team learn how to become master craftsmen of this beautiful gemstone. As our long day of travelling draws to a close, we head back to the hotel and find bustling streets with a very lively nightlife. But after some light merrymaking, we choose to get an early night to prepare for an early start tomorrow. The next morning, we wake at the rise of dawn, and by 6:30 the city is already active. Although it's so early, many people are out and about, and we see a huge public yoga session in the park, which seems to be very popular with much of the older generations. We stumble across many market stalls selling numerous fresh produce to find some breakfast. Much, of course, is unusual to our palates, but perfectly delicious within Chinese culture. Keen to start our journey, Miss Feng informs us that we have a long 4-hour journey to Changbaishan, which literally translates to perpetually white mountain.
Just stop the car on the highway just outside of the Shanghai Mountains, because it's a good view from the distance to see this is a stratovolcano. That basically means that as the eruptions happen, because the lava is very viscous, it sticks, it doesn't flow too fast, so we get a build-up on a build-up over millions of years of the sticky lava. And also volcanic ash that sticks on top of this. In fact, they have found volcanic ash from this mountain range as far away as Japan. So the actual lava sticks, but then the ash spreads quite quickly. But over millions of years, you get this nice layering effect, very much like Kilimanjaro.
Further along the road, we travel through fields upon fields of small, 1-foot-tall turrets. We stop so Miss Feng can tell us some more about this fascinating Chinese delicacy.
Kind of like a mushroom. It's called mure, and it's a dish that's it's eaten a lot here in China. It's also exported all over the world, and we're going to have some this evening, so I'm really looking forward to it.
Mure is grown in tightly packed bags with holes in the side to channel crops into easily harvestable handfuls. They are then sold fresh at market or commonly dried in the sun to preserve for future consumption.
At the top of the Shanghai Mountains, it can get to minus 45 degrees in January. In fact, it only raises above freezing for 3 to 4 months of the year. Luckily, we're here in July, but July is the wettest month, with 12 inches of rain average falling just in this month alone. Luckily for us, though, we're not mining at the top of the Shanghai Mountains. We're at an altitude of just about 400 meters, so it's not going to be that cold while we're here.
As we travel further into rural China, we discover the roads to be much more difficult to pass, eventually stopping to assess the situation.
Well, Mr. Jing's car that's been really good for us for a few days can't get up to the road to the mine. We've got about 70 kilometres. When they said 70, I said, "You mean 17?" She said, "No, 70 kilometres." And it's rained the last couple of days, so this beautiful car, which I'm sure is very well made and well constructed, can't get up the track, so we're waiting for a 4x4.
Steve takes time to watch rural life passing by, and Miss Feng uses the opportunity to refresh us all with some tea. After an hour, the 4x4 arrives, and we are ready to get back on the road for a rough journey along some less travelled roads.
It's a lot of fun, but we've still got about 40 kilometres to go. But what they've just told me is that if the rain does come back, then there's no way at all that we'll get back this evening. We'll have to stay at the actual mine, sleep in the car. But there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of us at the moment, so that's going to be a little bit cosy.
As we travel deeper into the forest and near the mine, we eventually have to stop again due to the poor road conditions.
Got a little bit of a problem. The rains have been so intense the last couple of days. It's a bit the same story as last month in Sri Lanka, big monsoon season. And as you'll see here, the roads are all torn up, so we can do the rest on foot. The wonderful thing about Shanghai Peridot is it has great clarity. I mean, all the peridot of the world is beautiful. What we brought you from Arizona, what we brought you from Pakistan, what we brought you from here in China, from Yunnan, is all beautiful peridot. But what makes this very special is its clarity. And the reason for that is its journey to the Earth is quite short. You see, the Earth is normally about 90 miles thick in the actual crust, but here, it's only 30 to 40 miles thick, so that short journey means that we get less inclusions and we get some of the finest peridot in the world. We always hear people talking about a beach in Hawaii that's full of peridot. And that kind of makes sense now because Hawaii is very volcanic, and here, of course, is also very, very volcanic. It's all that olivine from the bottom of the big tectonic plates. In particular, we talk about the cratons and the base of the cratons being made of olivine. The problem, of course, is everything we've seen over the last couple of days, with the exception of 4 or 5 pieces, are way too small to cut into beautiful gemstones.
Mining of peridot dates back to 1500 BC, where the Egyptians believed it was the finest quality emerald ever seen. It was instructed to be only mined at dusk or after dark, as the bright gemstone could not be accurately seen for its vibrant bright lustre in the daylight, but would glow lively under moonlit conditions.
So some 350 million years ago, the top of this hill was the top of the world. It was literally at the North Pole. And then with all the tectonic plate movement, it eventually came south. It eventually latched on to something that we know as Pangaea. Now, Pangaea back then was a single continent. There were no other continents. It was absolutely huge. You see, this is sitting on top of what we call a craton. Now, cratons, back about 400 million years ago, were little islands in the oceans of the world. There were no continents back then at all. These cratons, while small on the surface, were massive underneath. They were big, bulbous pieces. They actually protruded deep into the mantle and the magma. All around us here, every bit of basalt has got a small piece of olivine, or, as we know, of course, peridot when it crystallizes perfectly. And this proves that many millions of years ago, this would have formed the base of the craton. The base of the craton touches then the magma underneath, and it is that reaction zone there that when the magma comes up and it all crystallizes, provides us with beautiful peridot.
Upon arriving back at the car, a mix-up in communication has occurred with some mine workers who believe we are trespassing and decide to barricade the car in, making it unable to pass the only road back down the mountain.
Well, even though they've kidnapped us for about the last 3 hours or so, they've seen quite enough guys. Seems to be eating berries and stuff. I'm not quite sure what's going on yet. Miss Feng's gone off for the second time back to the mine owner's hut, which is about an hour's walk, and we'll see when she comes back. But one thing for sure is these guys are not moving their truck.
With no choice of leaving and a communication breakdown, Steve, Matt and Brian stay with the car while they wait to find out when and if they'll be able to leave before the light falls.
Could be worse. Could be worse. We could have no food. Could have.
I don't know what food you've got.
Well, we got those local nuts. Got some local nuts.
How big are the nuts?
Oh, go and get the bag and show him. Go and show the camera. Yeah, they're not really worth the effort, are they? They're like pistachios on a diet. They're like pistachios on a diet.
Natural toilet, natural everything.
This
is the only nut available for us.
Have you seen pistachios before? In England we have pistachios, but look at these. These are tiny. You've got to crunch them to get inside, and they really are not worth the effort. Once you get rid of the shell, you get this tiny little bit inside. Anyway, that should last us all night.
After much tense waiting, Miss Feng arrives back with the manager of the mine, who explains to the workers that the group do have permission to use the road. Nearing dusk, we leave Changbaishan. Though the group are exhausted and hungry, everyone is pleased with being able to visit and study the region where our stunning peridot is sourced. Tomorrow, we look forward to a relaxing day ahead, as Mr. Ying takes us to some of the highly recommended cultural hotspots of the Jinlin region. Today we are visiting the Dunhua Temple in Jinling. With elegant, intricate design, the temple perfectly complements the tranquil and beautiful surroundings of the region's landscape. As we enter the temple, we are reminded to cover our shoes as a sign of respect before entering the central hall.
I've wanted to visit this temple for many, many years. It's very close to the Korean border. This whole region, not only does it have wonderful peridot and great gemstones, it also has a lot of history. It's been occupied by the Japanese, it's been occupied by the Koreans, and the whole area is deeply, deeply religious. We're going to see a lot of Buddhas while we're here. We're going to see a lot of history, and to really understand more where our wonderful peridot comes from.
Visitors of all nations and religions are welcomed warmly and encouraged to join in and experience the rich culture and history of this region. Steve is invited to partake in the tradition of burning incense, which is commonly practiced as a way of honouring ancestors, as well as worshipping idols, deities and spirits.
Now, if you thought gold was just popular in Europe and India and the West, well, actually you'd be wrong, because here in China this Buddha is made of pure gold. It stands 4 meters high. It's the top of the 1,000 stairs that you probably just saw us climb up. It's made of pure gold, 999 purity. And talking of 999, I'm told there are 9,999 individual pieces handcrafted to make this Buddha.
Many monks, worshippers and tourists from around the world come to visit this famous temple. The temple is built in the mountain range close to the border between China and North Korea, and has in turn been influenced much by Korean traditions. However, although North Korea is mainly atheist today, for much of its history, it has been directly influenced by China, and the Korean shamanism has welcomed the Buddhist religion for thousands of years.
In the background are the hills of Luingshan. It stands for 6 Tripod Hill. It's just to the north of Luingshan where we find the peridot. But because peridot only comes up to the surface of the earth through the kimberlite pipes in the centre of the volcano, they're only in isolated little areas. And I wonder whether if it was to be found in more areas, where the peridot, being so beautiful and obviously the colour that the Chinese really, really love, whether it actually would have been more important than their jade.
Buddhist visitors repeatedly pray and offer blessings to loved ones and upcoming events to discover and express their deepest feelings and aspirations. Common blessings performed by others promote good health, success of ambitions, aid strength, deliver support and prevent harm.
In total, there's 999 steps. That's a bit of a breeze, really, when you think in Tanzania, 800 meters below the ground, we have to walk down 3,500. So I shouldn't complain. We're in beautiful, cool weather. It's a nice little bit of drizzle, a little bit of rain. And after yesterday's day at the mine, this is a welcome relief.
As the golden rays of the evening creep in, the group are taken to experience some traditional Changbai cuisine. In true Chinese tradition, guests are welcomed and treated to only the best of regional dishes. Some dishes are specially cooked and some left raw for shared communal cooking. Much like a fondue, the Chinese huaguo, which translates to hotpot, has been used for thousands of years and originated in Mongolia.
Well, we might not have eaten yesterday when we got stuck at the mine, but today we're having a big feast. Miss Lin Ying over here, her brother is the one that runs the mine that we went to yesterday. Gentleman to my right is the local mayor. The gentleman over here is some sort of head of a mineral society, not quite sure what his post is. And the rest of the team work for Mr. Ying at the cutting factory. But it really is quite a feast.
Typical hot pot dishes include thinly sliced meat, leaf vegetables, mushrooms, seafood and noodles, all accompanied with a range of sauces. Following tradition, Mr. Ying offers a toast to Peridot and future promising business relationships. A perfect way to end the day as we knuckle down to discuss business and make some gemstone deals tomorrow. As Mr. Ying unrolls his Peridot collection, we yet again are intrigued with the unique fashion the beautifully cut gemstones are tended to and cared for.
Olivine, as we know, comes from underneath the tectonic plates, but it only gets rebranded as Peridot when it's of a gem quality. The actual olivine itself isn't that rare. It forms underneath of the big cratons all over the world. But to get gem quality is very, very unique indeed. In fact, Mr. Ying, who collects this gemstone for me from the mines, tells me that to find a 1 carat piece, they literally have to sort through 4,000 or 5,000 little pieces of olivine to find a piece that's 1 carat. He said that the first jump in price is at about ½ a carat, then it goes through the roof at 1 carat, and on that very, very rare time they can find a 2 carat piece. Well, literally, he said he can normally name his price. Even though we talk about Peridot being set in jewellery for 3,500 years, it hasn't always looked the way it looks today. In fact, the Peridot that you're used to seeing has only been around for about 20 years. It's not the fact that the gemstone has changed, because Peridot was made millions and millions and millions of years ago. It's just the fact that cutting techniques have become very advanced over the last 20 years or so. Back 3,500 years when it was put into jewellery, they were very, very opaque. They had no idea about refractive indexes. They hadn't got the equipment to cut stones that they have today. Today we learn very much about the refractive indexes. We know, for example, that this has a refractive index between 1.64 and 1.7, and that tells us as lapidarists exactly and dictates exactly how we cut those angles on the pavilion. When you're buying Peridot, one of the most important things is the tone. You don't want it too light, but you also don't want it too dark. You want it to look like Peridot. You want it to be like Cleopatra's Peridot. You're looking for mainly greens in the hue, but also a little bit of yellow. And the whole colouring with this, as we know, is from the gemstone itself. It's what we call a manganese iron silicate. And it's the iron that gives it the actual colour. Too much iron, it goes too dark. Not enough iron, it goes too light. So that perfect tone is slightly lighter, nice and open in colour, with a little bit of gold and secondary colours coming through.
Acting as a go-between for Steve and Mr. Ying, Steve informs Miss Yang the type of parcels and quality we are looking to secure, and look to arrange an agreement over only the top quality Peridot.
It's important that Mr. Ying understands that we only want this colour. This is too light, not enough iron in the mix. This has too much iron. We all know that obviously it's manganese iron silicates. We have to have just this shade.
Oh my God, you only need a very good one. Oh, how to do. First thing you take, what we do. You see, this almost same, but you only need the best one.
Yes, this is just a little bit too light and this a little bit too dark.
Oh, no, okay. We will follow your company.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Tell Mr. Ying that's what we have to have every time.
Okay.
Mr. Ying's my business partner here in Shanghai, and he's been collecting Peridot for many, many years.
Boss it's because your company needs very high grade,
Yeah.
so very difficult.
Yeah.
This is the best one for you.
Yes. It's because we have, because we just sell gemstones, we always want the very best grades. That is why.
因为他们公司经常需要特别好的质量。
橄榄石啊， 是最美的、最好的。
Our Changbai is very, very best, and
Yeah.
also you supply to your company is best one.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
这世界上独一无二的。这
谢谢。
In the world, no one have like us. We are
目
very,
前世界上任何国家还没有跟中国的橄榄枝比。
right now, any other country is not more, better than us. Our country.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Boss say it take long time to collect for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
长白山是非常美丽的山。
Changbai Shan is very best.
Yes.
Very, very best.
Yes, Arizona
Yeah.
is good, Pakistan is good, but Shanghai, I agree, the very, very best. The very, very best.
Unfortunately, as we seal all our gemstone deals, our trip must come to an end. We would like to thank you for watching and experiencing the many differences between our way of life and China's rich culture. By visiting the exquisite Changbai region, it helps us appreciate the complex details of Olivine's crystal formation and the time and effort that help us bring only the best Peridot to the world.